Hi you guys, my name is Cyan Gore and welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to another episode of Bookmas. Today I thought I would share with you guys my all-time 5-star reads. These are books that I literally just can't stop thinking about. Whenever I read them, I had the best time. Most of these I read in like one sitting because I just could not put them down, and they are books that I will always recommend. So if you're in a bit of a slump and you need something to read, I recommend these, or if you just want to reach your goal by the end of the year and you want very bingeable books, I also recommend these. So let's get into it. I am also going to give the briefest description as possible because I actually surprisingly have a good bit of 5 stars and I don't want us to be here for forever. So let's run through it. First off, we're gonna go with historical fiction because I only have one in this category, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a beautiful story about two sisters. They are both living in France during World War II. It is just both of their different point of views and what's happening in their lives. One is more of the rebellious sister and one is a housewife and a mother, and it's just showing a different side to the war that you don't really get to see that often, or at least in my own experience. I haven't ever read a story like this and I really enjoyed it. It is a beautiful story. I didn't think I was into historical fiction, but Kristen Hanna has definitely changed my mind. So this is a 5-star and I highly recommend. Next up, let's do romance. So the first one I have is actually a figure skater romance. It was a victim to bookshelf molding. That is very unfortunate and I did kind of cry about this. If you think it won't happen to you, it will. But anyways, this is from Luke Off with Love by Mariana Zapata. She's the queen of slow burn, and I know everyone says that, but I'm not even kidding you. When her characters touch hands, you feel it. You feel an electric spark right then and there, and like it doesn't happen until literally 80% of the way through the books, but somehow it's not boring. In this one in particular, we're following two rival ice skaters who have to pair up together for a competition, and it's just a romance between them, and I really enjoyed it. So again, a 5-star romance for me. Next up is another series I always talk about. That is, of course, the Boys of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. I like every single book in this series so far. I haven't read the most recent one, but out of the first 4, they were all 5 stars for me because I just felt so emotionally connected to these characters. The first 2 are following Shannon and Johnny. They are high schoolers and you're seeing their home lives and how they're so different, and a love story between the two, and it's just like the most wholesome thing. They do have darker topics though. The 3rd and 4th book is following Shannon's older brother and how their home life also affected him and his love life. Beautiful stories. So I really do highly recommend these, and I believe they're also sports romances. I mean, they are. I know that they are, but I forgot what the sport is. But I'm gonna be so honest, the sport, it's barely even mentioned. So go into it for the romance and for the people drivenness of it. Next up, when I first read this book, I originally didn't give it a 5 stars, but every time I think about this series as a whole, this is the book I think about, and I just love it so much. I do need to do a reread of it though, because this is like honestly my favorite male love interest in a book that I've read so far, and that is Reckless by Elsie Silver. I love the entire Chestnut Spring series. I didn't give any of them a 5-star, but I feel like this one definitely is because it's the one that I always think about. Like I said, this one is following Theo and Winter. Theo is definitely your golden retriever energy and Winter is the black cat, and it's an accidental pregnancy, which I didn't know if I would like that trope because I've heard a lot of negative things about it, to be honest. But in this one, yeah. Next up, I have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I recently started reading her books and I really enjoy her writing. I don't know why I never picked them up before, but this one out of the 3 that I read is definitely a standout in my opinion. It's a 5-star for me because I just really loved, again, our male main character in here. I feel like the male main characters are what make romances for me. If I hate them, I'm not gonna like the book. And he is, again, just like a golden retriever. He is so good at communicating, and he sets up like the cutest little dates for them. If you don't know the plot of this book, it's basically where 2 people have a curse where every time they date someone and then break up with that person, the next person that their ex goes on to date ends up being the one. Like, they always end up getting married to the person after them. So since it happens to both of them, they meet on Reddit, surprisingly, and they decide to start going on dates with each other in hopes that their curses will kind of cancel each other out. But of course, they end up actually catching feelings, and it's just a really good story. Next up is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is about a girl that when her aunt passes away, she inherits the apartment, and the apartment is actually magical because it transports her 7 years into the past at random times. And then sometimes when she goes in, it'll be the present. Sometimes when she goes into the apartment, boom, she's back in the past. But not just by herself, because there's actually a man, a past tenant, that is living in the apartment every time she goes to the past, and they start to form a bond. And this again was one of those like wholesome romance romances. I really enjoyed the story. I will say though that I liked seeing the past point of views rather than the present, but I still really enjoyed this book and I gave it 5 stars. Next up, I have Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This is a small town romance about kind of like the town outcast. He's a guy who doesn't speak and she is new into town. She introduces herself, starts learning more about him, and again, it is a wholesome romance. I feel like those are definitely a lot more my speed. I'm more of a like acts of service kind of girly, and all of the like characters in the romances that I like, I feel like that's what they do. I loved Archer. I will say there's like a third act breakup in here and it kind of disappointed me, but this book still had my attention gripped. I was reading it in one day once again and I just always think about it. This is a series that I really struggled with. I've said it multiple times again, but that is the Magnolia Park series. I think this is my favorite book out of the series so far. I haven't read the most recent one, but this one, I just feel like I liked her characters a lot more, especially Daisy. I also prefer Daisy and Christian's story. We're following couples based in London. Magnolia and BJ are both socialites, and then Daisy and Christian in this book, they are part of like a mob family basically. It is very toxic. It's not going to be for everyone. I powered through the first few books and I still wasn't feeling that strong connection that a lot of people felt with the series, but once I got to this book, I really felt it. I love Daisy and Christian. This one was my favorite out of the series, so there you have it. But next up in the romances, this one is the one and only dark romance that I feel like I have given a 5 star, and that is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. In the story, you're following a girl who her and her future brother-in-law get kidnapped together, and while they are kidnapped, they start to actually fall in love, which just is an insane story. It is heartbreaking. It is beautiful. There's a character in here that I just wanted to absolutely strangle. And it's also very thought-provoking because it makes you wonder how you would feel, what you would do, and it's just overall a really good story. So if you're looking for a dark romance that's more on like the darker side when it comes to the emotional side of it, and it's not just, you know, serial killers who are screwing each other, you would like this one. And now that we have romance out of the way, let's get into dystopian. I only have 2 here, and surprisingly, they're both YA. The first one is actually Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is about a world where basically AI has taken over everything, and at the same time, there are no issues. No one is starving, no one can die, so they have these things called Scythes who they go around and they get to decide who dies and when they die, and they're in charge of killing people so that overpopulation doesn't happen. And in this book, we were following 2 different people who are going to be apprentices for a scythe and trying to learn how to do it themselves, and there's going to be a competition to see who gets to be a scythe at the end of this. It was so good. I really enjoyed the story. The world is very complex. I don't understand how he did it, but it just really blew my mind because I have never read anything like it, and it is just so different from any other thing that I've ever read. So I do really enjoy this one and highly recommend it. And then the other one that I have is actually The Gracier by Kim Leggett. I reread this recently, and let me tell you, it is still a 5 star. If anything, it's better. It's like a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's up there. I really love this book. It is about a girl that in her town, whenever the girls turn 16, they are shoved into the woods in a little encampment all by themselves with basically no supplies, and they are sent there to dispose of their magic because everyone thinks that when girls turn 16 they get magic somehow. And I mean, just think about you and like all of your high school bullies being shoved into a camp and having to survive when there's no supplies and everyone's accusing everyone else of like having magic. Crazy, right? And there's also like so many other things too that go on in the story. There's like something called the veiling process. There are looters. Like it's insane, and I really loved our main character and everything that she went through. I think she's a great, strong female lead. And again, I reread it recently and it didn't diminish the rating for me, so I highly recommend. Also, take it from me because I am someone who I don't reread a lot of books. I've only ever reread Birthday Girl, this, and the Zodiac Academy series. So I feel like that tells you something. Okay, these next 2, I don't know if you would consider them dystopian or fantasy. I feel like they're kind of in the middle, but that is Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I love these books. I know I'm saying that about all of these, but it's just the truth. These are probably my top 5 favorite books because, again, The world is so interesting. Depth to these characters. It is about two boys who, when they're in college, they figure out how to give themselves superpowers, and then once they get older, like, they basically turn into enemies. The revenge side of it is petty, but I loved it so much. Powers aren't like your basic average powers that you see on TV shows or anything like that. Like, it's not just, you know, super speed or like I can read your mind or fire or ice. It's like really interesting powers that I would never even think of, so I highly recommend it. I will say it's gonna leave you hanging on the edge of wanting more. I have heard there's a third book being written, so I'm super excited about that. And I'm just saying, I'm a fan, so I would love it if there's a third book to be written. Also, I have so many questions, so if not, what's going on? Like, V.E. Schwab, clock in. It's time to get to work because I need to know. And then I had to include another book by V.E. Schwab, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I know I've only read 3 of her books, but all 3 of them have been 5 stars for me, so I think that just says something. We are following Addie LaRue. She makes a deal with the demon, and basically she will never age. But the thing is that every time she meets someone, if they leave the room and come back in the room, they will not remember who she is or any of their interactions with each other. So she basically has a hard time forming any type of relationship with anybody, and it makes her pretty much invisible in the world. So she is going through a lot. It's definitely more on the slower side of things. It is, like, I would say more people driven, but I really love this story, and her writing is just so beautiful. It's lyrical and a little bit flowery, but at the same time it's not too complex to where it's hard to understand, and it's not pretentious either. Like, I genuinely just love her writing so much, so I will always recommend her books, and I need to read more. I have is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I really enjoyed the story. It's about a girl named Signa. She interacts with death to help solve a murder, and it's historical, so it has Bridgerton vibes. It has fantasy elements because she can't die, and also death is personified, and it's like a murder mystery. It's perfect. So I really enjoy this one. It's very interesting, and it also has romance, so like I enjoyed it. I ate it up, read it in like one sitting, and it's just some of my favorite tropes into one. These next 2, you probably already know what they are because I swear I haven't shut up about them, but they're just my probably favorite fantasies of the year. The first one is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This is about a girl that she thinks her sister is participating in the game of Phantasma. In order to save her sister and potentially her family home, she herself decides to enter the games as well, and the games are 7 trials based off of the 7 levels of hell. There are demons, there are ghouls, there's like a demon dog thing, hellhound, terrifying, and there are phantoms and ghosts and all these like haunting things that keep happening, and I really loved this. I will say a lot of people found it very slow in the beginning, and I'd have to agree. It takes a minute to get into it, but not that long. You know, like, I don't think you'd want to give up. I think you could push through because it gets so good so fast, and it's a 5-star for me. Next up is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. Another book that is historical and is also fantasy. It's about a witch and a witch hunter who are courting each other in order to get extra information on the witches and the witch hunters. And it's also best friend's brother. It's so much fun. It's a quick, easy read. It's YA, and I really enjoyed it. I read it in like one sitting, and I feel like this one really put me in a fantasy slump right after, to where I didn't want to read any other fantasy because nothing was comparing. Next up is actually another YA fantasy, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This one is about a girl who she thinks that she's writing letters to her brother through a magical wardrobe, but as it turns out, it is actually her work rival. And there's a war between 2 different gods, or a god and goddess, that is going on, and her rival both get sent out to go and do coverage of it because they work for a newspaper. You know, other things take place. This one is a lot heavier on the romance than it is the fantasy, but it's very wholesome, and I really loved her characters, and it was just so sweet. I will say though, it is a duet, and the second book was good, but just not as good, and that one focused a lot more on the fantasy side of things, so this one I just prefer. You know, I'm a romance girly when it comes to my fantasies, what can I say? Next up, of course, I have to mention Zodiac Academy. It's just raunchy, it's ridiculous, it's fun, it's not too serious, and I love it. It might be trash to some people, but I love it. It's about 2 twin sisters who they find out they are heirs to a fae throne. However, they first have to go to this school to be able to prove that they are worthy of taking over the throne, and lo and behold, there are 4 guys who are also trying to take over that throne, so they're going to start bullying them. It's a very long series, but I can't put it down. I can't put it down. And then next up, I don't know why I grabbed this one. I grabbed Akatar. The first book is not a 5-star, let me just say that. I feel like the second and third books are really 5 stars for me. I'm not even gonna like describe what this series is about either, because I feel like everyone already knows what it's about, because now that I know everything that happens, like it's too complex to explain. But anyways, the second and third book, loved, 5 stars for me, but the series as a whole too is just a 5-star series. And then I also grabbed the first book in Throne of Glass because this entire series to me is like a 5-star read. That's the thing with these series, is that while each book may not be a 5-star, once you get to the end of it and you're just like, wow, and you're lost and you don't know what to do with your life anymore because now you have nothing to obsess over. That's what made both of these series honestly feel like 5-star series for me. I know this one's still continuing, but still, like, once I read the last book, I was like, what do I do? And then these last 2 books, I also kind of feel similar about, to where none of the books in this series was a 5-star, unfortunately, but the series as a whole was a 5-star experience. It's actually 2 different series that you don't have to read all in order, but I chose to, and I think it just enhanced my reading experience with it, and that is the Caraval and the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I read these 3 first, and then I went into these 3, and doing that just made me really feel for our main character Jack in this one, and I really loved him and was obsessed with him, especially considering everything that he went through in this series. So that is why, even though I don't think I rated any of these a 5-star, at the end of it all together, like, the series is a 5-star for me. But that is it for this video. Those are my 5-star reads. Let me know if you read any of these, what you guys thought of them. If you hated them, that's totally fine. I get it. My reading taste is not the best, I'm gonna be so honest, but those are my thoughts and opinions. So let me know yours down below. Let me know what some of your 5-star reads are if I didn't mention them here, and maybe if I haven't read them, I'll read some of your guys' 5 stars. But that is it for this video. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next Bookmas video. Bye!